The 5th chapter of Fortnite has come to a close with the Remix the Finale event. The event concluded with us traveling to another reality with Hope and Jones turning the page onto chapter 6. But just before we saw chapter 6's island, we watched as a large object followed behind us, which turned out to be a fragment of the 0 point. And as we had just seen, one of those shards hurtled straight towards the chapter 6 island, crashing into it and reawakening the dormant magic within it. This season, Fortnite Chapter 6 Season 1 Oni Hunters, we find ourselves alongside Hope and Jones in Reality 783, more specifically the island of Oninoshima, otherwise known as Demon Island. After the shard of the 0 point crashed into Oninoshima, the shockwave of the impact not only caused magic to re-emerge on the island, but it also opened up ancient portals to the spirit realm, and out of those portals walked out this season's main villains, the Oni, who've returned to the island to drain it of its spirit energy, but also to search for something of great importance. One of the Oni is named the Night Rose. At first glance, it seems like she's just another regular villain. However, her story proves to be far darker. It turns out she wasn't always an Oni and is actually possessed and puppeteered by one of the demons. Aside from that, we were also introduced to 3 new characters that play a vital role in this season's storyline: Daigo, Kendo, and Jade. The 3 of them are siblings, with Daigo being the eldest of the 3. They are descendants of artisans that used to craft masks of power before magic was outlawed in Oninoshima. Each one of them deeply cares for the island, but seeks to protect it in their own means, causing discourse between the 3 of them. However, Daigo was taking a more radical approach to protect the island by restoring forbidden magical masks with dark magic, following in the footsteps of his overambitious ancestors that nearly enabled the destruction of Oninoshima, which is something we learned from the Fox Clan and the River Guard, both of which have returned to the storyline this season. With the release of a brand new chapter come a multitude of questions, such as how did we get to chapter 6, what happened to the 0 point, who are Daigo, Kendo, and Jade, what is the Shattering War, who are the Oni, what are Hope and Jones searching for, and why are the Oni on the island? There's an abundant amount of lore to recap, so sit back, relax, and let's explore the magical world of Oninoshima. Our first question asks, how did we get to chapter 6? When the Remix the Finale event ended, there was a bit of confusion about what really happened during chapter 2 Remix and whether it was a dream or not, mainly because of the purple tunnel we'd seen at the end of the event. The reason for this is because that same tunnel was also seen during the Rift Tour event back in chapter 2 season 7, in the segment when the last reality scanned our memories to learn more about the island. With that in mind, and the codename of this tunnel being Memory Tunnel, the community associated the tunnel with the mind of the loopers. So many assumed that since the purple tunnel appeared at the end of the chapter 5 finale event, it meant that chapter 2 Remix was just a dream. However, after lots of thinking and researching, I can almost confidently say that Fortnite chapter 2 Remix was not a dream. And there's lots of evidence that can back this up. First and foremost, we used a rift beacon to open up a portal to chapter 2 Remix. Rift beacons are designed to open up rifts to other realities. As we'd seen in the Big Bang event, Remix had its very own reality, as it had tons of Midas related props on it and the chainsaw from the Mom Spaghetti POI. So the beacon opened up a rift to the Remix reality. Another piece of evidence pointing towards Remix not being a dream is that Meowtis has secret NPC dialogue with Nyanja, meaning Meowtis has to be real in order for that interaction to happen. It's also worth mentioning that originally when the Remix finale event ended, the words "wake up" were meant to show up on our screen when the tunnel appeared, but it was scrapped. And when something is scrapped from Fortnite's storyline, it means it's no longer canon. Lastly, we have the tunnel I was talking about before. After doing some revisiting of Fortnite's past lore, I believe that rather than this tunnel being associated with the minds of the loopers, it's actually how the inside of a rift looks like. This would make it a wormhole. I say this because in the Batman Fortnite 0 point comics, you can see the same wormhole within the rift that opened up in Gotham City. The reason why we saw our memories in the Rift Tour event was because the last reality artificially created this rift in order to scan our minds while we were in the process of traveling to another reality, hence why the wormhole even showed up in the first place. From what I could tell, this wormhole only seems to appear when you're traveling to another reality using a sideways rift. Now I know that's a lot, but I hope it cleared up any confusion about the event. So to sum it up, Chapter 2 Remix was not a dream, and the tunnel we saw at the end of the event was actually a wormhole that appeared appears when traveling to another reality. Despite that, before we left the wormhole, we saw an enormous object fly past us, which turned out to be a fragment of the 0 point. Leading into our next question, what happened to the 0 point? The Big Bang event was the last time we'd seen the 0 point, and ever since then, people had been wondering, what happened to our precious blueberry? Thanks to the Chapter 5 finale, we finally have our answer. Now we know that when the time machine fused meteor struck the 0 point, it didn't just cause the Omniverse to be reborn, it also shattered the 0 point into multiple different fragments. But now I know some of you may be asking, Rez, if the 0 point was destroyed, how does everything still exist? Well, here's the thing, it was destroyed, but it also wasn't. And that's where my theory comes into play. Initially, the Big Bang event was the moment the 0 point was born, and the rest was history. So it's safe to assume that the 0 point was born again in the second Big Bang event which we witnessed. But this time, I theorize that when the 0 point was reborn, rather than it being an orb again, it created itself a humanoid body. The reason I say this is because in the leaked Fortnite survey skins, one of the skins literally looked like the 0 point if it was a humanoid being. If this theory turns out to be correct, then that means the 0 point orb itself was a cocoon in a sense, and the core within it was a caterpillar developing into a butterfly. It required outside intervention in order to be set free, and the Big Bang event we witnessed did just that. The cocoon fragmented into pieces, and the caterpillar, that being the core of the 0 point, became a butterfly, which in this sense would be the humanoid being. This would explain how reality itself still exists. The 0 point orb was destroyed, but the 0 point itself, the core, still exists. And yes, this does mean that the loop no longer exists. Both the island and the loop were defense mechanisms for the 0 point while it was still an orb. Regardless if it's a living being now or not, both the loop and the island no longer exist anymore. And the same thing might apply to Reality 0 itself as well. Nevertheless, while we don't know where this humanoid 0 point currently is, what we do know is that its shards have scattered across the Omniverse and are ending up in various realities. One of those realities is where Chapter 6 takes place, Reality 783. After the fragment crashed into the island, it reawakened the island's magic, beginning Chapter 6 storyline. Making way for our next two questions. Who are Daigo, Kendo, and Jade, and what is the Shattering War? With the launch of this chapter, we've been introduced to three new important characters named Daigo, Kendo, and Jade. As mentioned at the beginning of the video, the three of them are siblings and descendants of a family of artisans that used to craft magical masks on Oninoshima. However, at some point, because of their ancestors' actions, magic became forbidden on the island. To fully understand the story of the three siblings and their motives, we need to first understand their family's past and why magic was banished from Oninoshima in the first place. Upon visiting the Fox Clan's chief, V, you can ask her about magical masks, and she explains what had happened in the island's past. V reveals that long ago, the Fox Clan used to have magical masks thanks to a family of artisans that knew the secret to crafting them. Unfortunately, the family began to grow overambitious, creating dangerous masks of power that eventually led to a ruinous war on the island, known as the Shattering War. Thankfully, the war ended, but as a result, masks shattered, magic was banished from Oninoshima, and the Fox Clan was blamed for the majority of it. Although what V tells us is just one part of a much larger story. The Empress of the River Guard, Mizuki, informs us even more about the Shattering War. When asked about the masks, Mizuki reveals that it was the River Guard who declared the Shattering War to destroy the magical masks. The Empress agrees that the masks are useful, but they come at a cost, one she is not willing to pay. Then when you ask her about the Fox Clan, she claims that the clan have made mistakes. Before the Shattering War was declared, the Fox Clan's mask maker forged ruinous masks of power that nearly tore Oninoshima apart. Following the Shattering War, magic was banished from the island to protect the people. But after the 0 point shard crashed into Oninoshima, magic returned to the island, and Mizuki is very concerned about it. Lastly, when you ask Mizuki about the River Guard, we learned that the River Guard's trust in someone had been broken, and since then, they've decided to avoid others, completely keeping to themselves moving forward. The Empress then reveals that it wasn't the entire family of artisans, but rather one ambitious artisan that chased power, resulting in the Shattering War. Since then, the lessons that had been learned from the war had been forgotten. However, Mizuki warns that the reminder of those lessons will be very sharp. Just before we move on, there is a lot more lore to break down about the Fox clan, but I won't be doing that in this video. I'll be covering that instead in my next video, so make sure to subscribe and stay tuned for that. Nevertheless, together from V and Mizuki's explanation of the war, it seems only one of the artisans became overambitious, and that was the mask maker of the Fox clan. The artisan craved so much power that he created ruinous masks of power, and the Fox clan foolishly used them. Because of this, Oninoshima was almost completely torn apart. Fortunately, the River Guard was able to stop them all in time. The masks were destroyed and magic was banished from the island to protect its residents from any future conflicts. It's unknown what happened to the Fox clan's mask maker, but the rest of his family burned the secrets to making the magical masks, and ever since then they've been creating regular masks in their shop known as the 1,000 Faces. Daigo, Kendo, and Jade are the descendants of the family of artisans that made those masks. At some point, since Daigo was the oldest, he inherited 1,000 faces from his grandfather. Daigo was always fascinated by the magical masks and the stories that his ancestors used to make, and wasn't too fond of making these normal ceremonial masks. But he had no way of learning how to create the magical masks since magic was banished from the island, until now. After the Zero Shard caused magic to re-emerge on the island, Daigo chose to stop the production of non-magical masks and learn how to craft the masks of power that his ancestors made long ago. Alongside that, he also was using the ancient Japanese art technique named kintsugi to repair broken masks from the Shattering War. By looking at his cosmetics alone, Daigo has a dark theme, indicating that he is playing with dark magic. It seems he's unknowingly going down a dark path and following in the footsteps of his overambitious ancestor, just as Mizuki had warned. The lessons of the war had been forgotten, and the reminder will be sharp. Jade is curious about the island and its magic. She has a very special connection to the magical sprites, and in her NPC dialogue, she says she wants to see every nook and cranny of this island. Jade is closer with her older brother Daigo than with Kendo, but she still loves and cares for Kendo dearly. Jade believes that the island's stories have always been about balance, contrary to the belief that they are always about war. She thinks that if balance could be restored to the island, things will be amazing again. That's why Jade is so interested in the sprites and the island itself. She wants to help restore balance to the island of Oninoshima. Kendo is an aspiring warrior. At the moment, he has no teacher, but he hopes to have one someday. He looks up to the warriors of the past to learn how to become a better warrior. Out of all three of them, Kendo was the most responsible. He deeply loves his siblings, but has a bad relationship with his older brother and is a bit too overprotective about his sister. But aside from that, he still cares for them a lot. Kendo has a little pet that travels around with him named Tomoki, who constantly looks like he's gonna bite Kendo's head off. In all honesty, I have no idea what it is, but it looks like some kind of oni monkey goblin pickle eating thing. But it looks cute, so whatever. Apart from that, just like Hope in Chapter 5, there is also a lot of focus on Kendo this chapter, and I personally believe he may be the main protagonist of Chapter 6, who will join alongside Hope to help her find the source of Pandora's box. This was even alluded to by the Mizuki NPC when you speak with her while wearing Kendo. Mizuki tells Kendo that you will not find your purpose here, warrior. Meaning Kendo will likely leave Oninoshima with Hope and Jones after the dark artifact on this island is taken care of. But first, the three must deal with the demons that have now invaded Oninoshima. Tying into our next question, who are the Oni? When the magic on Oninoshima reawakened, portals to the spirit realm that were formerly dormant had immediately opened up. This allowed the Oni to cross through and return to the island. When asked about the spirit realm, Daigo reveals that currently only demons can travel in and out of it. The leader of the Oni is Shogun X. We know this thanks to Fortnite's item shop post about him, where they outright described him as the real ruler and commander. As seen in game, Shogun X is draining the spirit energy of Oninoshima. He's likely doing this to grow in power and spread more darkness throughout the island. The Night Rose is one of the main villainous Oni that have arrived on the island. She's described as a fearsome demon warrior bound by ancient duty. Although the more you look into her story, the darker it gets. From her cosmetics alone, there's a constant theme of Night Rose being puppeteered by something and that she is bound by ancient darkness. When you visit Demon Dojo, you'll see that she's being puppeteered by a powerful Oni. If you battle the Night Rose at first, the Oni possesses her body to fight you, but once you defeat her, it leaves her body and takes control of the Oni mask. While it simultaneously attacks us, it's also holding Night Rose's body with strings, and you could hear Night Rose crying out for help. Take a listen. We haven't gotten such a dark story for a character since Chapter 4 Season 1, and I gotta say, I honestly love that they're getting back into the darker aspect of the story again. Nevertheless, out of all her cosmetics, the most important one is the Night Rose's song. Initially, I believed this song was going to be pretty dark, as I'm sure the rest of you did as well, but once I heard it, it sounded a lot more hopeful and uplifting than creepy or dark. Based on what I was able to gather from the translations of the Night Rose's song, it turns out the reason for this is because the song is sung by Night Rose herself. In her song, she yearns for freedom from the demon possessing her and hopeful for a brighter future. In dialogue between Jade and the Night Rose, Jade tells Night Rose deserves freedom. So with Night Rose's music pack in mind and what Jade told her, both are likely teasing that we might help Night Rose later on so she can regain her freedom. Leaving us with our last two questions. What are Hope and Jones searching for, and why are the Oni on the island? This season, Hope and Jones can be found at an apartment in the Hopeful Heights POI. When you speak with the Jones NPC about what Hope and himself are doing in this reality, Jones keeps it very confidential and tells us that the two of them are looking for something, and that's all we're getting from him. He's very serious this season, and it's a drastic shift of tone for Jones again, considering in Chapter 5 Season 4 Absolute Doom, he was a lot more relaxed and energetic. Nevertheless, since we struggle with getting anything out of Jones, we can speak with Hope, and thankfully she gives us a bit more information about what the two are after. While Hope too remains confidential, she tells us that what they're looking for is a power similar to that of Pandora's box. But she explains that the reason why both her and Jones are so secretive is because they are not the only ones looking for it, and the other ones looking for it could be the Oni. That's because the Oni are in fact searching for something as well, which is why they returned to the island. I have a theory as to what it may be, but to fully understand everything, we must first go over the storyline quest this season. Part 1, Kendo's Calling, begins with us visiting and speaking with the Kendo NPC about the nature of the demons. When the 0-point shard hit Oninoshima, the island's magic reawakened. This allowed the Oni to enter the mortal realm and invade it. Kendo asks for our help to find out why the Oni are here and what they want. Our first task was to damage some demons. After we did that, we learned that Jade and Kendo met with Hope. That's because Hope too wanted to learn more about the magic on the island. So Jade tasked us with placing spirit charms around the island to help them learn more about the magic that is now present on Oninoshima. Once that was done, to understand the true nature of the Oni, Jade had us collect residual essence of where the demons were most prominent, but unfortunately the essence was just not potent enough. Therefore, we were told to instead eliminate the Oni, gathering the essence straight from the source. Fortunately, this time the essence was potent enough as it was fresh and directly from the Oni themselves. Once we gathered enough essence, Kendo had us return to Hope's location with it so she can learn more about the emergence of magic on Oninoshima. When we bring the essence to Hope, she tells us that she came to this reality with Jones in search of an artifact like Pandora's box. After analyzing the essence, she's not surprised that magic on the island has returned, referring to how the Zero Shard was a direct cause of all of this. Hope says she still has some figuring out to do with her associate, Kendo, and will get back to us later. I don't know, guys. I think something's brewing between these two. Anyways, upon completing part 1 of the story quests, remnants of the 0-point energy can be found at Nightshift Forest. When we investigate this energy, we learn that the Oni are somehow connected to it and that it also drives their rage. We're not entirely sure how just yet, but something I wanted to point out is that the reason this energy is here is because this battlefield could be where the climax of the Shattering War took place. Part 2, Jade in the Mask, begins with us visiting and speaking with the Kendo NPC again, but this time we talk to him about dark magic. Kendo reveals Jade has gone missing after an investigation of the influx of demons coming from the spirit realm. Kendo inquired his older brother Daigo about her disappearance, but Daigo refuses to talk about it. Kendo knows that his brother has been experimenting with dark magic recently and believes his brother could be why their sister vanished. We have a look at the spirit portals ourselves, and lo and behold, we can see Jade's face inside of it, meaning she's trapped in the spirit realm. When we investigate the portal, Jade repeats the same two words, the shard. The shard, referring to the 0-point shard that reawakened Oninoshima's magic. It seems that Jade now understands how magic returned to the island, but now she's trapped in the spirit realm. After learning that his sister was trapped in the spirit realm, Kendo tasked us with visiting his older brother's shop, the Thousand Faces, to see if we can learn anything more. The first thing we see is a dangerous mask of power, likely from the Shattering War, and Kendo gravely warns that it should never be repaired. Our investigation continues and we go beneath the shop where we discover many terrible things. Daigo's trapped sprites within cages to extract their power and created a machine that flowed with dark magic. He would then use that dark magic and imbue it with new masks he crafted. Lastly, we see a painting and it reveals that Daigo gave Jade the mask Kendo warned us about. Now this is probably an inconsistency of some sort because the mask on the painting is sealed up in Daigo's shop and Daigo looks a little bit different on the painting as well. This is probably because this painting was made before everything in the story was finalized. But thanks to Jade's cosmetics, it can be assumed that this is actually the mask that Daigo gave her. Nevertheless, after completing our investigation of Daigo, we return to speak with Kendo. Kendo believes that Jade's recklessness and Daigo's arrogance is what ultimately got his sister trapped in the spirit realm. He's still confused about how his sister got into the spirit realm in the first place, since according to him, only the Oni can do that. Kendo tells us he'll speak with us again soon, but for now, he needs to learn more about the magic and demons to understand how to save his sister from the spirit realm. Upon completing part 2 of the story quest, we can return to Daigo and confront him about Jade. Daigo tells us he would never hurt Jade, and she's the only one in the world he trusts. He reveals that Jade was cursed by the Oni, so Daigo made her a mask to protect her. Unfortunately, the masks made things worse, and it's the reason why Jade got trapped in the spirit realm. I theorize that the reason why Jade was able to enter the spirit realm without being an Oni is because the demon's curse and Daigo's magic combined gave her enough power to enter the realm but not leave. And that's all of Chapter 6 story quests for now. Now that we've gone over this season's story quests, here's my theory about what Hope, Jones, and the Oni are possibly searching for. In my last video, I mentioned that I believe Kusanagi no Tsurugi is the artifact that Hope is looking for. Here's a clip from my last video explaining what it is. For those unfamiliar with this artifact, the sword has a dual nature of good and evil, similarly to Pandora's box. While the box mostly contained evils within it, it still contained a seed of good, hope. The good side of Kusanagi no Tsurugi is when the sword is used appropriately, it serves as a symbol of protection and great power. The wielder of the sword holds a great burden of responsibility with it. That's because if they're not, or if it falls into the wrong hands, the power within it can corrupt its wielder, leading to terrible conflict and destruction. Figuring out what the artifact is using hints and clues from the season was a bit difficult, considering Jones and Hope were literally gatekeeping any information about it. However, an interaction between Mizuki and Hope might be suggesting that what Hope is searching for is in fact Kusanagi no Tsurugi. If you interact with a Mizuki NPC while wearing Hope, Mizuki tells Hope that the artifact she seeks is here on Oninoshima, yet not here at the same time. In Japanese myth, an artifact that fits that description is Kusanagi no Tsurugi. From what I know, in Japanese mythology, Kusanagi no Tsurugi is neither reachable in the mortal realm, which would be Oninoshima, nor the divine realm, which would be the spirit realm in this case. Its whole existence is shrouded in mystery according to the mythology. The sword is basically in the in-between of both the mortal realm and the spirit realm. How that is accessed, we don't know yet, if that even is the case, of course. But ever since magic returned to the island, the Oni now have access to both realms. So perhaps the demons are trying to find a way to get into that in-between space. And if they get to that space between the realms first, they'll be able to control the power of the artifact. But if Hope gets there first, she can help prevent whatever calamity it could cause. At the moment, the Oni have the advantage, but now that Jade is in the spirit realm, she can learn more about it. Once Jade's set free, perhaps she can help Hope and Jones get to it before it's too late. There's still lots of lore to go over that I will be explaining all throughout this season, so if you'd like to stay up to date with Fortnite's storyline, make sure to subscribe. And that wraps it up for the entire Chapter 6 storyline explained. Thank you all for watching, Happy New Year, and see you guys in the next one. Take care.